It all began as a murmur in the online corridors, a subtle undercurrent of dissent, a quiet realization that sometimes the architects of success end up trapped in a system that no longer recognizes their worth. Imagine a digital stage where millions tuned in to laugh, cry and revel in the unscripted spontaneity of genuine camaraderie. At the heart of this stage stood a channel known simply as YeahMad, a platform whose meteoric rise was fueled by raw authenticity, natural chemistry, and a genuine connection that resonated with every viewer. But within that magnetic collective there existed a nucleus, an OG crew, whose very presence was the lifeblood of the channel. These were the pioneers, the originators of a style that defied corporate formulae. As YeahMad soared to incredible heights, it also began to reveal an underlying tension, a discrepancy between what was owed and what was given. The creators, once united by a shared vision and a collective passion, began to sense that their creative genius and unwavering dedication were being undervalued, a sentiment that would eventually propel them to chart an entirely new course. There is a moment in any creative endeavor when one must weigh the cost of loyalty against the promise of freedom. This was that moment, a point when contract negotiations turned into heated debates, and whispered ideas of independence began to echo louder than ever before. A pivotal conversation unfolded in an unassuming meeting room where the owner of YeahMad, a man named Ben, tried to justify his decisions. "Look," he would say with a mix of frustration and calculated calm, "the risks, the investments, it all matters. The numbers, the margins, they're not just figures on a spreadsheet, they're the lifeblood of this channel." But to the OG crew, whose every performance had contributed to a dynamic surge in viewership, numbers reaching as high as 1.5 to 3 million views per upload, the argument sounded hollow. They recalled days when each video was not only a product, but a testament to their shared creativity, days when the spirit of spontaneity outweighed any contractual obligation. As the crew began to press for a fairer distribution of profits, demanding a share that reflected their indispensable contributions, they found themselves at odds with a system that was unwilling to bend. "You don't get it, do you?" one of them would challenge, voice quivering with both anger and disappointment. "We're not just performers, we're the reason people come back every single day." Even as negotiations reached an impasse, the tension mounted. In an atmosphere charged with the smell of burnt coffee and frustrated sighs, the first major rift became inevitable. Andrew, one of the key figures in the OG crew, had been the spark around which many of these conversations ignited. His repeated attempts to broach the subject of branching out, of creating something that belonged solely to the creators, were met with stern rebukes. "This isn't about betrayal," Ben would argue, his tone tight. "It's about protecting the brand, ensuring that the channel's future remains intact." Yet, what was intended as protection was perceived by the crew as a cage, a trap from which there was no escape if they continued to operate under such stifling constraints. The conflict reached a crescendo when decisions were made that would reverberate throughout the online community. In a series of events that felt almost choreographed by fate itself, Andrew was fired, first temporarily, then permanently, after his repeated insistence on exploring independent projects. The impact was immediate and profound. His departure was not just a personnel change, it was a symbolic severance, an emphatic statement that the very soul of YeahMad was fracturing. And when Abby, another luminary of the OG crew, found herself in the crosshairs of a heated altercation accused of disrespect in a moment of raw emotion, the cracks in the channel's foundation deepened. The office became a battleground of ideals where every word and every gesture was loaded with the potential for irrevocable change. Amid these turbulent exchanges, the OG crew began to realize that they had reached a crossroads. Over whispered conversations during late-night rehearsals and between the frantic buzz of editing suites, they shared a common understanding. It was time to reclaim their creative autonomy. There was a calculated brilliance in their approach. They knew that leaving too early would diminish their connection with the audience they had painstakingly built. Staying any longer might only result in further exploitation. So, with hearts pounding and minds racing with both hope and apprehension, they plotted their exit. The timing was crucial. They waited until the channel had achieved its zenith, riding a wave of success that they themselves had generated. By the time they finally bid farewell, their audience was not only substantial but deeply loyal, tethered to them not just as entertainers but as symbols of authenticity. In a moment that was as electrifying as it was inevitable, the OG Crew launched their new venture. Their independent channel, christened with the simple, unassuming name that belied its explosive potential, was unveiled to the world. The transition was nothing short of remarkable. Within 3 months, the new platform amassed nearly 1 million subscribers, a testament to the deep, abiding connection they had cultivated. "This is our future," one of them declared with a fierce, unyielding conviction that resonated in every syllable. The script they were writing was not one of defeat, but of strategic triumph. They had taken control of their narrative, turning a situation of disenfranchisement into a springboard for creative liberation. The ripple effects of this separation were felt by YeahMad almost immediately. With the departure of the OG Crew, the channel's momentum faltered. The once vibrant streams of millions of views per video dwindled, replaced by a stark reality, a drop in viewership that echoed the loss of that unique chemistry. New cast members were introduced, faces unfamiliar to the loyal fan base, but the spark that had once set YeahMad apart was conspicuously absent. The metrics spoke for themselves: a noticeable decline in subscriber growth and a steep drop in average views per upload. For every statistic, there was an echo in the digital community, a mixture of shock, disappointment, and even a sense of betrayal. Throughout this unfolding drama, voices emerged from the audience. Comment sections became battlegrounds of opinion, where fans debated not just the decisions of the channel's management, but the very nature of creative ownership. "We trusted you," one fan lamented in a comment that reverberated with the weight of lost faith, while another insisted they did what they had to do. The conversation wasn't limited to the viewers. Industry analysts began to weigh in on the broader implications. This was more than just a falling out between a channel and its creators. It was a case study in the shifting dynamics of the digital content landscape. Here was a clear illustration that in the world of online media, the creators are not merely cogs in a machine. They are the very engines that drive success. Their loyalty, their innovative spirit, and their raw talent were assets that could no longer be taken for granted. Amid the fallout, the narrative took on additional layers. There were those who viewed the OG Crew's departure as a masterstroke of strategic thinking, a classic case of outmaneuvering a powerful institution by leveraging the very success it had created. Outsmarting, they argued, was not just about winning a negotiation. It was about recognizing when the scales had tipped too far in one's favor and having the courage to reclaim what was rightfully yours. In countless online forums and video essays, commentators dissected the move, praising the crew for their foresight and criticizing YeahMad's inability to adapt to the evolving expectations of its talent. The dialogue was nuanced, reflecting a deep understanding that in an era where metrics of success were measured in real-time data and live engagement, the traditional hierarchies of media were being upended by those who dared to challenge them. Throughout all of this, the OG Crew remained remarkably composed. Even in the face of intense public scrutiny, they managed to communicate a sense of optimism and determination. "We're not bitter," one member explained in a candid interview, his tone a mixture of reflective, calm, and steely resolve. "We are just moving on to where we belong." It was a sentiment that resonated with many, not because it was devoid of conflict, but because it carried with it the unmistakable marks of hard-won wisdom. They knew that true outsmarting was not about burning bridges or leaving a trail of chaos. It was about transforming adversity into opportunity, about showing that creative freedom was a right, not a privilege to be negotiated away. Yet the narrative of outmaneuvering was not without its controversies. YeahMad, for its part, attempted to control the narrative. In a series of public statements and carefully curated social media posts, Ben sought to downplay the significance of the departure. "We're adapting," he proclaimed in one broadcast, his voice measured and apologetic, as if trying to stitch together a narrative of continuity. New faces were introduced in a bid to recapture the lost magic, but the change was palpable. For many fans, it was as though the channel had lost its soul. Comments flooded in, questioning whether the new cast could ever embody the same authentic energy, whether the connection that had once been so visceral could be replicated by fresh, untested personalities. Amid these turbulent reactions, there was also a quieter, more introspective conversation about the very nature of digital content creation. The case of the OG Crew and YeahMad became a touchstone for broader discussions about intellectual property, fair compensation, and the evolving power dynamics between platforms and creators. In countless video essays and blog posts, pundits argued that this was a clear sign of a paradigm shift. In the old model, content creators were seen as expendable, their contributions often commodified and undervalued. But the new reality was different. Audiences were becoming more discerning, and the personal brands of individual creators were emerging as powerful entities in their own right. In today's digital landscape, one analyst noted in a long-form article, the true asset of any media platform is not its brand name or its corporate structure, but the unique voices that drive its content. When those voices demand recognition and freedom, the system must either adapt or face decline. It wasn't long before the impact of the departure began to ripple outward, affecting not only the internal metrics of the channels involved, but also the broader ecosystem of online media. Competing platforms started to take notice, with emerging channels and independent creators drawing inspiration from the bold move made by the OG Crew. They saw a blueprint, a case study in how leveraging an existing fan base could serve as the foundation for a new independent venture that was both financially rewarding and creatively liberating. In interviews and panel discussions at digital media conferences, industry insiders recounted the OG Crew's strategy as a textbook example of how timing, authenticity, and a clear understanding of one's value can converge to create an outcome that is nothing short of revolutionary. Amid all this debate, a personal conversation emerged among the former members of the crew. In a quiet moment away from the glare of public scrutiny, two of the key figures, voices that had once harmonized to create the magic of YeahMad, sat down together in a modest studio, lit by the soft glow of computer screens. "Do you ever wonder," one asked softly, "if we could have done anything differently? If we had tried harder to change the system from within?" The other, his expression contemplative yet resolute, replied, "Sometimes. But the system was never built for us. We were built on the foundation of authenticity and passion. The moment we realized that our value wasn't being acknowledged, we had to decide. Stay and fight a losing battle or step out and build something new. I'd choose the latter every time." There was a pause, a moment of shared understanding that transcended words, and then a quiet laughter that belied the gravity of their situation. "It wasn't about burning bridges," the first added. "It was about lighting a path forward, a path that we control." Their conversation, though hushed and intimate, carried the weight of their collective journey, a journey marked by challenges, setbacks, and ultimately, triumph. In the days that followed, the digital sphere buzzed with a renewed energy. The OG Crew's new channel became a rallying point for those who believed in the power of independent creativity. Social media exploded with tributes, memes, and impassioned discussions about the implications of their move. Every subscriber, every like, every comment was a small act of defiance against a system that had once tried to silence them. "This is more than just a channel," one dedicated fan tweeted in the early hours of a new day. "It's a declaration that we, the audience, will not be manipulated by corporate greed and outdated power structures." And indeed, the momentum was undeniable. In just a few short months, the independent channel had not only matched, but surpassed many of the expectations set by its creator's legacy, achieving subscriber milestones that reaffirmed the OG Crew's enduring influence. While the drama played out in real time, there was also a reflective, almost philosophical discourse unfolding in parallel. The very notion of outsmarting was being redefined in the context of online content creation. No longer was it merely a game of numbers or clever negotiations. It had become a symbol of reclaiming one's agency in a landscape that was often unforgiving and relentlessly exploitative. Creators began to see themselves not as mere employees of a larger machine, but as individual brands with the power to shape their destinies. In long-form interviews, thought leaders in the digital space discussed how the OG Crew's move was emblematic of a broader shift, a movement towards transparency, fairness, and the democratization of creative ownership. When you hold the reins of your own brand, one media strategist explained during a podcast interview, you're not just a part of an engine, you become the engine, the spark that ignites innovation. His words, delivered with a mix of admiration and pragmatic realism, resonated with aspiring creators who were watching and learning, taking note of every strategic nuance and every emotional undercurrent. Of course, there were those who argued that the fallout for YeahMad was inevitable, that the channel had always been on borrowed time. They built their empire on a foundation that was never truly theirs, one critic opined in a lengthy online review. And when the original builders left, the cracks appeared, and the entire structure began to crumble. Yet, even as YeahMad struggled to redefine itself with new cast members and a reimagined formula, the legacy of the OG Crew continued to cast a long shadow. Every misstep, every faltering view count became a stark reminder of what had been lost, a unique spark that could never be replicated by mere replacements. And in this light, the story of the OG Crew was not one of betrayal or bitterness. It was a story of evolution, of learning to value oneself in an environment that often prized profit over passion. Throughout this journey, one constant remained: the unwavering loyalty of the fans. In every forum, every comment section, there were voices that celebrated the OG Crew's courage and decried the shortcomings of YeahMad's management. The digital landscape had transformed from a mere battleground of content to a forum for discussing fundamental rights to fair compensation, creative control, and the freedom to evolve without compromise. In countless messages and video responses, fans recounted their personal connections to the channel, how a single video had provided solace during tough times, or had sparked a newfound interest in a creative pursuit. "I remember watching their videos on a rainy day," one viewer recalled with a wistful smile, "and feeling like I wasn't alone. They made me believe that even in the midst of chaos, there's beauty in authenticity." Such testimonies underscored the profound impact that the OG Crew had had, not just on the metrics of viewership and subscribers, but on the hearts and minds of a community that saw in them the embodiment of genuine expression. And so, as time marched on and the digital ecosystem continued to shift under the relentless tide of innovation and consumer expectation, the narrative of outsmarting evolved into a broader conversation. It was no longer just about a group of creators leaving one channel to start another. It was about redefining the very principles of online content creation. It was about recognizing that in the age of social media, where every like, share and comment carried weight, the power truly lay in the hands of those who dared to be authentic. The OG Crew's departure became a rallying cry, a call to arms for creators everywhere to assert their worth and take control of their creative destinies. "We are the creators," one of them declared during a rare live stream that broke the silence of post-separation uncertainty. "And it's time we remind the world that our value isn't negotiable." In the final analysis, the saga of the OG Crew and YeahMad is a vivid illustration of the modern digital age, a time when numbers and metrics are intertwined with human emotion, creativity, and the indomitable will to be heard. It is a reminder that every platform, no matter how big or influential, is built on the collective energy of individual talents. And when that energy is stifled, when it is not allowed to flourish in an environment that respects its inherent value, a reckoning is inevitable. For the OG Crew, the reckoning was not a moment of despair, but of liberation. A bold assertion that true success is measured not by the confines of corporate contracts, but by the unbridled potential of creative freedom. As the new channel continues to flourish, its rapid rise is not merely a statistical anomaly, but a living, breathing testament to the power of authenticity. Every subscriber gained, every view counted, serves as a counterpoint to a system that once undervalued its most vital contributors. The story is still being written, with new chapters unfolding in real time. It is a story that challenges other platforms to rethink their relationships with their creators and forces an industry-wide reckoning with the notion of fair compensation and respect for creative agency. In quieter moments, when the digital clamour fades and the numbers recede into the background, one can almost hear the echoes of those early days. The laughter shared among the crew during late-night brainstorming sessions, the palpable excitement of creating something that felt entirely new and undeniably real. Those echoes serve as both a reminder and a promise that even in a world governed by algorithms and analytics, the human spirit, the desire to create, to share, to be recognized, will always find a way to shine through. There is a lesson to be learned here, one that transcends the particulars of YouTube channels and digital media companies. It is a lesson in courage, in the willingness to step away from a comfortable yet confining structure in order to forge a new path, to embrace uncertainty with the belief that true value lies in authenticity. It is a lesson in negotiation, not just of contracts and percentages, but of identity and creative purpose. And above all, it is a lesson in the power of community. For in the end, it is the unwavering support of an audience that believes in the promise of genuine connection that makes any act of defiance not just possible, but inevitable. As we close this chapter and look ahead to the future of digital content, the story of the OG crew and their audacious departure from YeahMad remains a beacon for all creators who dare to dream big and demand fairness. It is a story that will continue to be dissected, discussed and celebrated for years to come, a reminder that in the end, outsmarting is not about outmaneuvering a single entity, but about reclaiming the narrative of one's own destiny. And so, while the echoes of the past still resonate in the halls of digital history, a new era dawns, one in which creators stand tall, voices united in the relentless pursuit of creative freedom, and a community that refuses to be silenced by the confines of outdated systems. In this era, the true measure of success is not found in fleeting metrics or ephemeral trends, but in the enduring power of authenticity, passion, and the courage to take that leap of faith. The OG crew did not just leave a channel, they left an indelible mark on the fabric of online media, a mark that challenges every platform and every creator to reimagine what is possible when you dare to be truly yourself. In the end, the saga of outmaneuvering is a testament to the human spirit, a reminder that while the digital world may be vast and ever-changing, the bonds of creativity, trust and genuine connection remain timeless. It is a story that calls us all to reflect on our own journeys, to consider the value of our contributions, and to find within ourselves the strength to stand up for what is right. For in a world driven by relentless change, the one constant is the undeniable truth that authenticity, once unleashed, is unstoppable.